Adventures here with the next video in my Q&A answers from my Q&A video. A couple of videos, I think this is part 4. We have, I'll try and get through as many as possible so I can get close to the last page. So there'll either be 1 or 2 more parts, depending on how long I waffle, I suppose. So the next question is from Paul Bradley. And his first question is, if you had to get rid of your collection but was allowed to keep 3 games, what would they be? It's a very hard question to answer. Now I'm going to eliminate anything that I wrote, because of course I would automatically always keep all those, so I would never even consider selling them. Now I've thought about this a lot. I'd have to have some compile shooter, and I know some of the later ones on the later systems are actual better playing games, but for nostalgia reasons and because it's a system that I really love and I have to have a game from it, I'd pick Aleste 2, which runs on MSX2 by the way, and it's a disc game, and is a very good shooter. I showed the actual box recently in my monthly video where I answered a tag. Next, I'd have to keep a game from the Atari 2600, and this was really hard to choose. I mean, you've got games like Hero and River Raid, and even Phoenix is really good and everything like that, but I'd have to go with the game that I'm best at and have on and off held the record for, which is Sequest. And actually speaking, I haven't actually played that for a little while. I might have to have another go at getting my record back. And then the next one, once again, it's only 3 games, it's not a lot. I would have to say Tempest 2000 for the Atari Jaguar. I've wanted that game for a long time, and ever since I've got it, I pretty much have been playing that game every time I sit down and have a set, and I find it relaxing and fun and challenging. And when I can afford it, I definitely want to get a spinner controller for the Jaguar to play it. But I really do enjoy playing it, and I enjoy playing the Jaguar version. It's actually a very good, fun game. So his next question is, Cooper's Pale Ale, do you drink it? Personally, he loves it. No, it is a very good beer. I don't drink a lot of beer, that's the only thing, because it makes I've got a bad back, and unfortunately beer has hops in it which aren't good for you, that sort of thing, so I generally drink ciders. But if I'm going out and having a beer and I don't have something like a Cascade or Bogue's Pale Ale, I'll probably more than likely have a Cooper's, because all 3 of those are very nice drinks. So yes, if one was put in front of me, I would definitely drink it. Next, for his question 3, he has entered in a whole lot of binary, which I then had to translate. And so basically, it ended up being, how many games do you own? Very clever way of asking a question, and harks back to the machine code programmer in me. Well, currently, and official count entered into a database, I am just shy of 2,500 games and consoles and computers. So games, about 2,400 games, but it actually doesn't include everything because I still have some more stuff that I have to enter. So we might as well say 2,500 games. And that's a lot. It's scary when you go and start putting it into a database and actually counting it. If I remember, I'll put a link to my collection down below. The tool I'm using allows me to publicly show it. So thank you for your questions. Now the next questions are from a YouTuber called guardianDogg. Now he did a video set of questions. His audio is very low. Hopefully I'll be able to max it as much as possible, but I'll repeat what he asked me after we have a look at it.
Hey, this is guardianDogg, and I'm wishing Electric Adventures happy 1500 subscriber contest special Q&A. Now this is going to be like an addendum or an additional to my questions that I did on his video. Where question 1: Do you like Formula One racing? Question 2. Do you play a musical instrument? If so, uh, do you play for your kids? 3. What's the weirdest game you ever played, but you enjoyed it?
Alright, so thank you for those questions. So his first question was, do you like F1 racing? Yes, I do. I actually usually closely follow the season. My wife actually quite likes it as well, although she was more a fan of Australia's Mark Webber than she was Ricardo. So she probably this season didn't follow as closely. But I do enjoy F1, and actually of all of the type of racing games, I actually quite enjoy playing F1 racing games. So there you go. Yep, I am an F1 fan. Right, do you play an instrument? And secondary to that, if I did, have I ever played an instrument to my kids? Unfortunately, I'm not that musically inclined. I did play the clarinet and a bit of saxophone in high school, but I didn't continue it on. I do actually regret that a little bit. In not learning actually, music notes and things like that. I also used to be able to sing quite well as well, but I have middle ear problem where I can't hear myself properly. So in-car singing only. So that's where I do actually play my instrument, my voice, in the car with my daughters. When we're driving around, I'm actually very blessed that all of my daughters can sing. Some can sing very well indeed. And that's one of the activities that takes up a lot of time, taking them to singing and things like that. But we actually have family singing in the car when we're driving around, which is always fun, and I look forward to, because it's lovely hearing their voices. And they don't complain too much, so I suppose my voice can't be too bad sometimes. They do more singing than me, I will point out. So, weirdest game you enjoyed? I do pre-read these questions just so at least I have some idea in my head. I couldn't actually pick a particular game. I'm going to put it in a general category of there are quite a few really quirky Japanese games, a lot of them for the MSX and also the Famicom. They've got some really quirky concepts and characters, but you actually find yourself enjoying playing them. Like there was one for the MSX recently which has got a really long name. It's sort of like a tiny kitten who goes for a walk, and it's a platform game that's a little bit Mario-like, and it ended up being quite a surprise. It's by Casio. I can't remember the Japanese name. I should have written it down, but very good questions. He also wrote some typewritten questions, but I've answered his video ones because they were the more interesting ones, and I don't want the video to get too long. Okay, next we have WatchReadPlayRetro. His first question is there a programming language or software application that you don't know but wish you had have learnt or have had time now to learn? Well, actually, I've achieved the goal of this. I would have actually liked to have learnt 6502 assembly language back in the day, and I was thus programmed for the Atari 8-bits and the Commodore 64, and I suppose the VIC-20 as well back in those days. But I ended up on the Z80 side of the fence. So myself recently learning 6502 and the NES architecture and programming that has been a very pleasurable and good personal achievement to finally achieve, to get past that goal. And now I'm pushing myself onwards to learn the SNES as well, which basically has an extended processor similar to the NES. It's designed to be semi-compatible. Maybe the original intention was that the SNES was going to be backward compatible. Right, number 2. If you ever had a chance to meet a programmer coder of early games, who would it be? And it clarifies a bit, and I suppose I mean the more abstract, such as picking a certain MSX or console game designer, and if Japanese, having an interpreter with you. Also could be anyone alive or dead, more a question about admiring somebody's work or creative style and getting to meet them to discuss and learning from them. Once again, very hard to pin down to one person, but I probably have to put. I'm going to pick one, and I'm going to give some almost on my list. So I'm going to go for Hideo Kojima, in other words, from Konami, and the designer behind all the Metal Gear games. And of course, he worked for Konami during the era when all of those wonderful MSX games were created, and the effort and quality that went into those games. I mean, had I been the right age and everything like that, I sort of missed by only a couple of years. By the time I got a letter from ASCII Corporation offering to buy some of my software, MSX was already waning a little bit at that time, and plus I was still too young to actually know what to do about it, or stuck all the way down here in Tasmania and getting a letter from Japan. So Konami would have been wonderful to work for, but obviously ASCII. I don't actually know the names of any ASCII programmers. Now, my runner-up would have to be Shigeru Miyamoto from Nintendo. I've always admired, how much he's put into all of the things that he's made, and particularly, I know everybody always harks on is not a fan of the Nintendo 64. The Nintendo 64 was basically designed with, they asked him what would he like a console to do. So, and obviously the key game that came out for it was Mario 64. So the fact that it was based on Silicon Graphics hardware, which was the be-all to end-all 3D technology at the time, and he was able to produce a game called like Mario 64, was groundbreaking at the time. So I have great respect for that sort of thing. So sitting down and having a chat to him about coding and designing and hardware design would be fantastic. And my other pick, who didn't quite make the number one, but I'd still love to meet him, would be Jeff Minter. Of course, being a 6502 programmer and a very creative guy, coming up with all sorts of interesting concepts. Just like myself, a lot of his games are based off other games, but he added his unique twist, more so than me. Mine were more clones. So I'd love to meet all three of those. Question number 3. You've mentioned closing your store due to family commitments, and that the crash soon happened anyway. But had the crash not happened, would you be missing comics these days, thanks to the recent interest crossover in the last decade, say with Marvel, DC, and the cinema and more? Well, yes, as I ran the store, and a large proportion of it was the comics, and I collected comics as well. That reminds me, I've never actually shown my comic collection, have I? Maybe that's a video for a future video at some stage when I get some more time. And I really did enjoy looking at the new series and trying to figure out which ones people would be interested in, and you find you evolve and you slowly expand the number of comics you're interested in, and you find new artists and things like that. And I have kept most of the comics that I was mostly interested in, that I collected myself during that time. And yes, I have missed out on some of the storylines since, and I would have liked to have been able to collect some of them. I do actually go into comic stores occasionally and I have a look through, but I'm sort of a bit lost of where to start with some of them. So in a modern day collector thing, I've sort of been obviously doing the Walking Dead, and also the Game of Thrones ones, but I've been getting them in the trade paperbacks rather than the individual comics themselves. I also have quite a good Uncle Scrooge collection. I actually really like those particular series because I've collected those since I've been a kid, and I didn't keep those going either. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. But and as far as superheroes, yes, I am actually a really big superhero fan, and I am. Although probably one of the very first superhero comics I actually read was one called, I think it was Black Hawk. It was a comic of my father's. But then after that, it would have been the very first Batman comic, as probably a republished one that I bought in a newsagent's as an origin story. The story would have been the first one. But I have actually over time more liked Marvel. superheroes, one of my favourites is Iron Man. But I also do like the Flash from the DC universe, and I'm a pretty good Superman fan as well. So there you go, I'm all over the place, aren't I? So really good questions. Thank you very much for those. Next we have Dave, Imagamegeek. I said his name right for the first time. Question, favourite console and why? And I said I'm going to take that at face value, console, because as soon as I start introducing retro computers it gets too complicated. Favourite console? Without a doubt it's going to have to be the ColecoVision. It's related to my MSX machines and my original Spectre videos, but and it's really hard saying that over the Atari 2600, but yes, no, it'd have to be the ColecoVision because the games just have that next level of arcade realism, and it's got the games on it that are from the arcade games at the time when I went to the arcade, so and they look fairly close and everything like that, and I also enjoy programming for it too, so yeah, so at the end of the day, if everything got stripped back, the older stuff would survive out of my collection rather than the newer stuff. Right, what got you into programming? Well, I did do, I was quite good at maths in high school, and I was also doing science, so I did a course called Advanced Science for the last 2 years of our high school, which is 9 and 10, grade 9 and 10. And as part of that 2-year course, you had to do a special project. And when I started out, because I was a space nut, I was going to do rocketry. So I always used to pull through the catalogues at those rockets that you could build yourself. And I was going to do that, and I was going to write a project on that. And one of my friends, classmates, basically turned to me one day and said, when we're in that class, oh, why don't we ask the teacher if we can go use the computer? And I went, oh, that sounds interesting, that sounds good. And we went and we asked the teacher, and the teacher let us and there were 2 girls in the class as well, 2 twins, all 4 of us were allowed to go on the computer. The girls got bored within 15 minutes and left. So myself and my friend, we stayed at this computer. Now, to classify what this computer was, it was a VDU terminal into what was called the Elizabeth Computing Centre. So it was a dumb terminal, but we soon found Advent, which is one of the very first text adventures before Zork. I found that you could make your own basic programs on it, and I found a basic manual, and so I started learning basic. I then started hanging around Tandy stores and bought the very first Tandy basic programming book, and my parents that Christmas, at the Christmas in between, bought me the next book in that series. They're 2 books I've really got to find. And it just kept on snowballing from there. It just fascinated me, and I kept on going and kept on learning and teaching myself. First console I owned. There was a little caveat. The very first video game console our family owned was a Hanimex, like a Pong console, but it also had motorbike games. So I had analog controllers, and you jumped the motorbikes over things, and I can't remember the name of it. I've never seen or found the exact model of that one. That's the first one our family owned. But going through actual consoles that I bought myself, I never had an Atari 2600. That was my friend's. I used to go to his place 5 kilometres away to play the Atari 2600, and that is one of the Atari 2600s that I have here, and quite a lot of my Atari 2600 games, because he gave them to me, which is very much appreciated. In television, I used to play at the kids next door house when I used to babysit them, and they only had a couple of games, so I never owned one of those. ColecoVision, I sold them, but I never owned one. I got the Coleco adapter for my original Spectre video and a couple of games and a single Coleco controller. So that still wasn't a console I owned. You then have to wind forward to when I actually ran my shop, and I would say the very first, I'm just harking my memory thing, and I actually think it was the, and just to do a couple more, Sega Master System. I only played the one in the store I worked in, never owned one myself. I couldn't afford to buy these things. And so then you wind forward to when I have my own store, and it would actually be the Super Nintendo. Because I bought that, had it in the store for people to pay time and play, but I never really took it home for a very long time until I shut the store and kept it. And I still have that original console. That's my Super Nintendo that sits in my game rack behind me. So that was a good question. Okay, sorry, there's a quick break. Next question is from Nicktwolf. We have you ever thought of doing a video about where you live? I have thought about doing some driving videos, if you know what I mean, because we actually have quite good scenery. I have done one when I catch a little bit of footage and things like that, but I need one of those cameras that you can fix into the just below the sun, the mirror in the centre of the car, so it stays still. Last thing I did with my iPhone, and it was very difficult, and I timed it very badly because most of the time I drive, so it's impossible to film and drive at the same time. Sorry, I got interrupted there. If you could live anywhere else, where would it be and why? Obviously, we'll go for different countries. It would definitely be between Japan and the UK, and I'm sure that Japan probably wouldn't suit the rest of my family, so it would probably have to end up being the UK. So, and I have been to the UK before, and there's a lot I like about the different areas in the UK. And us Australians, our culture is half based on the UK and half based on the US. So, USA maybe is a close second, but yeah, no, it'd definitely have to be the UK. I couldn't tell you where particularly in the UK, because I'm not as familiar of the different areas, other than what you see in Escape to the Country, which is probably tainted with prejudice. What are your top favourite books? I'm going to have a think about this one. Top favourite books would have to be, I'd have to list Star Wars books in general. I actually have quite a large collection of those, so I'm going to cheat heavily here. And also Star Trek books and Doctor Who books, but we better actually put some actual specific books in there. I actually quite like the book Battlefield Earth by Ron Hubbard. I know some of his other stuff's a bit crazy, but I remember buying that book on a Friday afternoon, shopping with my mother. Found this book and thought, oh, this sounds absolutely fantastic. Got home, ate my tea, and read it while eating my tea, and continued reading it, and at about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning finished it. And that's probably the fastest and most consistent I've ever read a book in my life. Then for other books, you'd have to go to, I actually really like some of the sci-fi classics, and I'm selecting particular books of authors. I can actually see some of them right here. I actually really like Doc Smith and his Lensman series. That was really, really enjoyable. I actually have every single book that Doc Smith wrote. But also, I actually really like books about time and everything like that. So it's so hard to choose. Oh, actually, I quite like the book Have Spacesuit Will Travel by Robert Heinlein, because it's the first book of his that I read that got me into his books. And Isaac Asimov would be the Foundation series. Now, I'm sure I've just listed probably about 8 items there, so take it as you will. I cheated quite heavily there, but you've probably found out more about my reading habits. I like sci-fi books, and I still collect, I still buy and read sci-fi books. It's very hard to name specific ones. and I didn't even name a Philip KD book, and I have most of his books as well. So anyway, okay, Jessica Lancaster has one question: where do you find your MSX games? Most of the time I have, the majority of the MSX games that I have over there I've actually bought at from the Japanese auction sites. There's one called Yamotoku, who I've used on a frequent basis. Items pop up occasionally. I possibly and they're getting very expensive now. A lot of people know about it, and some of the items are just going for way too much money, so I'm not getting very much. I did get a few titles from Hit Japan several years ago. That's actually where I got one of my less titles from. They're always willing to take offers, and the prices were way less than they charge now, but now generally their prices are quite high, although if you consider how much the prices are elsewhere, they're probably not too bad for the current prices, but they're more than I would pay. The other area, and probably the main area where lately that I've got MSX games from, is from there's an MSX Facebook group, and also the msx.org website. It's trading, so you go on, a lot of people are selling items, and they'll also trade items as well. So hopefully that answers your question. We better do one more. This is EDT1138, one of my longest friends on YouTube. He doesn't do a lot of videos lately, but he's busy, family life and things like that, and yeah, so he doesn't have to. He's having fun, he's playing his games, and he makes the occasional video. So his first question is, any job, any place, where would you live and what would you do? It is acceptable to say you're happy as is. Well, any job, I would like to work for a innovative technology company. Whether that be the evil Googles and Microsofts and even Amazon are actually doing some quite interesting nowadays. I would like to work for a company that is doing new stuff and groundbreaking stuff, but also I am across a wide range of software technologies, and I do like the lower level stuff, so probably at the end of the day Intel wouldn't be a bad one, because they've got their embedded stuff and things like that. So yeah, that would be the thing. Now where, doesn't really matter where, as long as my family is happy. So obviously Tasmania is a lovely place to live. It's safe, we have lots of things in range, we do miss out on things, so another place that would have better opportunities for my own daughters would probably be better. So that could even just be mainland Australia, or the US. I have considered working in the US before. I'm not sure about the employment situation in the UK, so going back to our earlier question, what is your hidden talent? Hidden talent. So there has to be talent to have it. Love these tricky ones. Hidden talent. Thinking music. Well, you all know that I'm pretty good at video games and things like that. Oh, there we go, hidden talent. I am actually quite good at woodworking. Not that I've demonstrated it very much, because I haven't made much progress with my arcade control panel, but I've always had a natural ability to build things, and yeah, done it for a very long period of time. So there you go, hidden talent. Woodworking. Okay, now here's his doozy. Question number 3. You fall asleep in your game room, and when you wake up you discover that it has been magically transported to a deserted island. In order to get back home, you must build a raft out of items from your collection. What gets fashioned into a raft? Now, from the scientific person in me, no cardboard boxes are going to be able to use for this raft, or they'll get soggy and won't provide any flotation. So you're going to have plastic carts, and you might as well go with the biggest plastic carts out there. And they're going to be nest carts. Only trouble is I don't think I have enough NES carts to cut it, so we'd have to go into the Master System and the Mega Drive and the at a pinch the Famicom cartridges to make enough to make a raft, I reckon. It'd be very sad to see the Famicom ones go, and probably the Sega and the Master System. But the original NES cartridges, I don't have as much affinity with those. I prefer the Famicom ones. So there we go. Alright, that's enough questions for this particular episode, or we'll run over too much time. There'll be another part soon. I'm Electric Adventures. Thanks to all my subscribers. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.